Good afternoon. I'm Joan O'Hayan, Program Official in the Division of Clinical Research in NINDS and for NeuroNEXT, which is the Network of Excellence in Neuroscience Clinical Trials. I'd like to welcome all of you here today to our informational webinar on 3 funding opportunity announcements. In just a moment, you will hear from Dr. Clinton Wright, Dr. Sophie Cho, Dr. Chris Boshoff, and our panelists as listed here on our agenda. We're grateful for the many questions that you submitted throughout the registration and directly to us, and hope to address many of these during the webinar and the Q&A session to follow. However, we encourage you to continue to submit questions throughout the next hour. To submit, please use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Questions will be visible only to the panelists. The chat feature is also turned off during this webinar. And following the webinar, we will post frequently asked questions and this webinar, which is being recorded to the NINDS site. And now we will begin our presentation.
Clinton Wright, and I'm the Director of the Division of Clinical Research at NINDS. Welcome to the webinar to discuss the funding opportunity announcements to renew the infrastructure for the NeuroNEXT network. NeuroNEXT was initiated in 2011 and was renewed through a direct competition in 2018, but will be renewed through an open competition in 2023. The goals of the network are to support clinical trials and biomarker validation studies across a broad range of neurological disorders, except for stroke, certain early phase pain studies, and those in the emergency care arena, where we have other networks. The goal of the network is to increase efficiency and quality in clinical trials, to facilitate patient recruitment and retention and diversity in clinical trials, and enable public-private partnerships between NINDS and industry, foundations, and academia. The infrastructure of NeuroNEXT contains a clinical coordinating center, a data coordinating center, and 25 clinical sites that are distributed across the U.S. to enhance the diversity of trial participants. Central IRB, master clinical trial agreements between the clinical coordinating center and the funded sites, as well as central lab and pharmacy, are some of the resources that provide efficiencies in the network. In 2018, training and career development activities were enhanced, and that will continue in the current renewal. The clinical trials themselves and the other studies that are funded along with that are funded through peer-reviewed funding mechanisms that are open to investigators from academia, foundations, or industry. As you can see from this slide, a broad range of neurological disorders have been funded in the network. Those who successfully compete for the new infrastructure awards will be responsible for continuing and completing any ongoing clinical trials at the time of the award. I will now pass the baton over to Sophie Cho, who will provide more details about these funding opportunity announcements. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophie Cho. I'm a program director in the Division of Clinical Research at NINDS, and I'm the lead project scientist on NeuroNEXT. Today, we're going to provide information about 3 funding opportunity announcements on NeuroNEXT network renewal. One for Clinical Coordinating Center, one for Data Coordinating Center, and another for clinical sites. These FOAs use EU mechanism, which is a cooperative agreement. Application due date is November 21st, 2022. This is a one-time request for application, and this RFA will expire shortly after the application due date. To remind everyone, this is an open competition for all 3 FOAs. New sites are welcome to apply. The main purpose of NeuroNEXT remains to be the conduct of multi-site phase 2 clinical trials. Studies of biomarker validation are also eligible if a multi-center network setting is necessary. In addition, New for this cycle, the network will serve as the vehicle for the conduct of early clinical trials of gene therapy for ultra-rare neurological disorders. Phase 2 to 3 trials, if warranted by the nature of the studied population, such as rare diseases, can be conducted, and platform trials can be considered where applicable. NINDS aims through the network to support trials that can provide more rapid preliminary testing of new treatments. I want to briefly overview Network's scope of work. CCC Clinical Coordinating Center supports the trial throughout the life cycle of the study. During the conceptual phase, CCC conducts feasibility review for new proposals, supports PI for grant application, supports IND, IDE application if needed, and garners stakeholders' input, including from patient and community. During the planning phase, CCC works with protocol PI to finalize the protocol, conduct site selection, develop recruitment plan, monitor IRB approval process, and develop subcontracts with clinical sites. When the study is being implemented, CCC tracks enrollment and develop outreach interventions as needed. CCC works with clinical sites to ensure adequate diversity in study participants. CCC distributes study supplies and manages queries from the clinical sites. CCC conducts site visits as needed. After the study is done, CCC assists the DCC and sites for final reporting to regulatory authorities, patients, and public, and they work together in publishing manuscripts. DCC also helps the study from the beginning to the end. DCC at first reviews protocol synopsis from the PI, help creating timeline for building database, and help with statistical design. During the planning, DCC builds data management plan, creates trial-specific database, and develops CRF. They are encouraged to incorporate NIH common data elements in the study. DCC finalizes randomization process and develops data monitoring plan. While the study is ongoing, DCC manages the database for each trial, provides reports to DSMB, FDA, or NINDS if needed, and promotes standardization of data. DCC provides analysis for adaptive and Bayesian design if needed. After the study is done, DCC transfers data to a statistician and provides final analysis to work on manuscripts. DCC makes sure that the study follows NIH data sharing requirement. New for this funding cycle, CCC and DCC will organize network-linked open conferences to facilitate stakeholder discussions to identify areas of high unmet need and priority. At least one conference annually will be organized, focused on different disease or subspecialty areas for each iteration. The goal will be to proactively identify areas in which projects could be proposed to NINDS for implementation in the network. Participation will include NeuroNEXT members, but also key opinion leaders and other stakeholders from outside the network, who can be from academia, industry, nonprofit organization, or patient advocacy group. Again, used for this funding cycle, CCC will be also responsible for organizing and maintaining a gene therapy consortium. Here's more information on Gene Therapy Consortium. So it'll be organized by CCC. The consortium should be led by 6 to 10 members with expertise in gene-based and gene-targeted therapies, ultra-rare and rare diseases, and clinical trials with particular emphasis on first-in-human or first-in-disease trials, small clinical trials, and adaptive trial designs. GTC members can be from academia, either from NeuroNEXT or outside NeuroNEXT, can be from industry or nonprofit organization. Gene therapy trials will be selected for funding through related announcement, which will be research opportunity announcement that will use other transactions awards, or OTA, and this will be announced once the network infrastructure is established, including the GTC. GTC will be activated once the gene therapy trial proposal is received through NeuroNEXT. The trials can enter NeuroNEXT either through ultra-rare gene-based therapy program, or it can directly come to NeuroNEXT if the product is ready for the clinical trial phase. The GTC will work in collaboration with CCC, DCC, and project PIs and relevant sites for NeuroNEXT trials. Chris Boshoff is an NINDS Program Director for Urgent Program, and he'll give you a short presentation on this program. So I'm going to pause here for Chris, and I'll come back after his presentation.
A few comments about the ultra-rare gene therapy or urgent program. The preclinical component of the urgent network was launched at the end of 2021. This program is created to support the development of state-of-the-art gene-based therapies for ultra-rare neurological and neuromuscular diseases from in vivo proof of concept of an identified clinical candidate therapeutic through IND submissions. The program supports therapeutic modalities including but not limited to AAV gene therapies, oligonucleotides, and genome editing approaches. The definition of an ultra-rare disease for the purposes of this program is a disease with fewer than 6,000 people in the United States. The program is designed to allow for multiple entry points depending on the maturity of the proposed project. Both funding and R&D contract resources are available to advance these gene-based therapies from late-stage non-clinical development, clinical trial planning activities, to an IND submission with FDA. Successful projects are on an accelerated timeline and expected to reach the IND filing stage within 2 but not more than 3 years of funding and support. Looking at the diagram on the right, the first entry point to the urgent program after a patient is diagnosed with a pathogenic variant is access to a planning stage, where NINDS could make consultants and subject matter experts available to help an applicant to establish a therapy development plan. A second potential entry point for later stage more mature projects is a therapeutic development stage to fund and or make R&D contract resources available for conducting IND-enabling studies and initiate clinical trial planning activities to submit an IND package to FDA at the end of the funding period. The urgent program as a whole and all projects to be supported within the urgent program are overseen by an external consulting board of key opinion leaders in gene-based therapeutics. Once sponsors obtain a cleared IND either through the urgent program or already have an open IND and the asset available, then they may be eligible to enter the clinical treatment stage and benefit from the resources and expertise available through the Data Coordinating Center, the Clinical Coordinating Center, and the network of clinical expertise and infrastructure, which is the focus of today's webinar. Information about the urgent program can be found in a recently published paper in Nature Biotechnology, and additional information about the program and how to contact us can be found on our website.
Okay, I'm going to move on to clinical sites scope of work. NeuroNEXT clinical sites are expected to create and manage a clinical site team to participate in a minimum of 4 network projects. Clinical sites will implement shared protocols and assist NeuroNEXT Executive Committee working groups as well. There should be an outreach effort into the community and the patients. Clinical sites are also responsible for providing research and career enhancement experiences for a selected early stage investigator with allocated budget of $50,000. Sites will conduct trials in adult and pediatric populations. New this year, clinical sites are required to participate in network-linked open conferences. Just to remind everyone, the current FOAs are for the infrastructure, and there's a separate U01 grant for clinical trials. Trial-specific costs will go from the CCC to enrolling sites as a feature of subcontract. The cost will be on per patient basis according to approved protocol by the network via standing master trial agreements. Clinical sites may choose not to participate if they lack the specific expertise in a particular study. Sites must be willing to follow this funding agreement for each protocol. This diagram is to give you a summarized view of NeuroNEXT infrastructure. There's NINDS Division of Clinical Research closely working with NeuroNEXT Executive Committee, or NEC, which is a core committee of the network. And NEC consists of CCC, DCC, and site PIs. New for this cycle is the Gene Therapy Consortium put together by CCC, work closely with protocol PIs and the clinical sites. And most likely there may be ad hoc clinical sites for gene therapy trials if due to limited patient cohort. DSMB will be appointed by NINDS, and there will be external oversight board that NEC will report to. Okay, for this FOA, U.S. organizations are eligible, so no foreign component is allowed. Only one application is allowed per institution for each FOA, but one institute may apply for more than one FOA. For example, one institute can apply for CCC and clinical site awards. But to ensure that each component of the network runs smoothly, it is recommended that each award is led by different PIs. Any individuals with relevant expertise are invited to apply as PI. We encourage people from diverse backgrounds to apply. Multiple PIs are allowed for all three FOAs. Okay, we're getting to the application and submission information. We want to clarify here loud and clear that page limit for each of the three FOAs is 12. There was an error in CCC FOA where one of the sentences said 30 pages. Notice of correction has been published for this. In addition to SF 424 RNR application guide, additional information should be included in the area of senior key personal profile, budget, and research plan. And I'll go over this for each FOA. So first, for clinical sites FOA, in the senior key person profile section, applicants should include clinical trials expertise with a track record, name of co-investigators, availability of pediatric neurology infrastructure and personnel, a substitute PI candidate to assure continuity, and director and mentors for career enhancement program. For budget section, clinical sites should include budget plan for 1.8 to 2.25 person month total effort for the leadership, a full-time professional clinical research coordinator, and a salary for the training fellow, which is $50K per year, as mentioned before. The maximum allowable direct cost per year for a NeuroNEXT site will be $275,000. For research plan, we want to see the program's accomplishments in neurology clinical trials. For current NeuroNEXT clinical sites competing for renewal, they must include NeuroNEXT clinical trials that the site has participated in the current funding cycle by providing 6 items stated in the FOA, that is, progress and achievement, data performance metrics in a tabular form, timeliness and accuracy of data entry, team contributions, educational activities, and how the NeuroNEXT award has facilitated the clinical trial enterprise at the site and how the site enhanced the network. For new sites, they want to show their accomplishments in neurology clinical trials during the past 5 years by demonstrating efficiency of starting trials, enrollment and retention rate in their studies. All clinical sites should include additional plans as below. Leadership plan should show how the site PI plays a leadership role to the community, along with a group of multidisciplinary professionals in the field. Collaboration plan should demonstrate how co-investigators at the site will work together and how the clinical site will collaborate with other clinical investigators. Recruitment and outreach plan should discuss how to maximize the access to a sufficient number of patients, including pediatric neurology. Clinical sites also should provide plan to optimize efficiency of the clinical research enterprise at the site and performance monitoring and potential intervention plan. They also should include career enhancement plan as mentioned before. Clinical sites should describe any experience and expertise in the conduct of gene therapy and rare disease clinical trials. Transition plan should be included as well, and I'll elaborate on this a little bit more in a couple of minutes. CCC application should include prior experience in managing multi-center trial infrastructures and the planning and execution of multi-center clinical trials in the senior key personnel section. For budget, all activities related to coordinating 5 to 7 clinical research studies should be planned. In addition, maintaining the gene therapy consortium and running network-linked open conferences should be included in the budget plan. NINDS intends to commit up to $1.75 million to fund one award. In the research plan section, CCC should include leadership and operations plan and collaboration plan. They should include recruitment and outreach plan to support recruitment of patients and optimize minority recruitment at the clinical sites. They should plan for network-linked conferences as mentioned before. CCC should leverage local clinical research resources to build on existing strengths and integrate local resources. CCC should demonstrate a plan to increase the quality and efficiency of the clinical research enterprise by utilizing standardized master trial agreements and federated IRB models. CCC also has to have performance monitoring and potential interventions plan, training plan, and clinical coordination and project management plan. They should lay out how to compose the gene therapy consortium. CCC should describe current and up to 5 of the most recently completed trials to demonstrate their capacity. Moving on to DCC, their application should include prior experience in managing multi-center trial infrastructures, similar to CCC. They also should demonstrate that they have expertise in study design and data analysis in multi-center clinical trials, as well as in small clinical trials and gene therapy trials. In the budget plan, DCC is supported up to $1.3 million per project year, and they should provide plans for activities related to coordinating 5 to 7 clinical trials, supporting gene therapy consortium and network-linked conferences. DCC research plan also should include leadership plan and collaboration and communications plan, as well as data management, quality assurance, and monitoring plan. DCC should have statistical support plan for clinical trials. They should promote common data elements and data sharing with network investigators and others. DCC should include a plan for efficient data management support for trial startup and participant recruitment, and needs to include SOPs for project management and coordination plan. DCC should describe current and up to 5 of the most recently complete trials to demonstrate their capacity. Transition plan should be included as well. A couple more words on the transition plan. So it should be included in application in response to all 3 FOAs. CCC, DCC, and clinical sites should include plans for continuing the trials that are already funded and underway in the network without significant disruptions. Transition plans should also include plans for the end of the award periods should the CCC, DCC, or clinical sites not be selected for the next funding cycle. Now this takes us to application review information. Only the information on the review criteria described in Section 5 in FOA will be considered in the review process. Reviewers will provide an overall impact score. Reviewers will determine scientific merit based on significance, investigators, innovation, approach, and environment, and give a separate score for each. There are questions that reviewers will respond to in Section 5 of each FOA, so please read them carefully for details. Following initial peer review, recommended applications will receive a second level of review by the National Advisory Neurological Disorders and Stroke Council. For the final decision, other factors will be considered, such as availability of funds, relevance to program priorities, geographic balance of clinical centers, diversity of study populations among clinical center awardees, balance between pediatric and adult populations, and access to minority populations. This concludes my presentation. Here are agency contacts if you have any questions. These are the NINDS staff who participated in this NeuroNEXT webinar. Clint Wright is a director of our division, and this is me. Joan is a program official on NeuroNEXT. Lumi is the program director in our division, and she'll help to moderate the Q&A session. Shanta is our review officer, and she'll be present during the Q&A for any questions. Chris is a program director for Urgent Program in the Division of Translational Research. Scott is a program director who manages StrokeNet, and also with great institutional knowledge in all kinds of NINDS programs. We'll all be present during the live Q&A session to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for your attention.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. This is a live session, and we are going to address some of the questions that were submitted. We appreciate all the questions that were submitted before, and we will try to address as many as possible during this time together today. So I'm going to start with some of them. So the first one that I have here is, could you please clarify the transition plan for the sites that are not awarded in 2023, or if you're not reselected after the new cycle? This was briefly addressed during the presentation, but I will ask Sophie to address one more time.
Question. So the transition plan should cover both ends. For the current sites, if should they not be awarded in 2023 renewal, the transition plan should have been already described in their applications for the previous funding, application. For these upcoming cycle, the sites should describe the transition plan to continue the ongoing and studies that are underway if they are selected for the 2023 renewal, and also at the end of the cycle, if they're not selected for as a clinical site for the next cycle. Hope that clarified the question.
Thank you very much. The next question that I have is, are multi-PI applications allowed for the CCC, DCC, and for the sites? Additionally, can the applicant have partnership with industry personnel? John, would you like to take this one for us?
Sure, thank you. So as Sophie mentioned during the presentation, multiple PIs can apply for sites in DCC and CCC. However, it is important to make sure if there are multiple PIs that you are providing information to show that you complement each other, can work cohesively, and have a strong support for that moving forward. Additionally, sites can partner with other sites or can partner with industry as well. Hopefully that clarifies, or if anyone else wants to add to that.
Thank you, John. The next one is, will clinical sites with capabilities to conduct gene-based and gene-targeted therapy have higher priority for funding? I will ask Chris to take this one, please.
Yes, thank you for that question. I wouldn't refer to it as higher priority. You can imagine a situation where there are many more rare and ultra-rare diseases than clinical sites that we can come up with. So I think the key thing to remember is just that a site should be a good match with that particular ultra-rare or rare disease and be capable and willing to perform the study.
Thank you very much. Let's take this one. Could you summarize about the key metrics to include on the site on a site renewal application? Scott, since you have a lot of experience, how about taking this one?
Sure. And so we've done this with all of our networks. It's just to be clear that what we're asking for is for the currently renewing sites to report how they've done in the trials they participated in NeuroNEXT over the last 5 years. And for the new sites, you would have to include trials that you participated in that would demonstrate you have a comparable level of experience or a performance activity that would match what's happening or would be needed for NeuroNEXT. So just to kind of break it down, there's sort of 3 main metrics that are being asked for in the FOA. One that addresses starting the trial, the efficiency of starting the trial. The next that would address the efficiency of enrollment. And then the last one that really gets at performance metrics. And what I would just highlight is that in the FOA, there are specific questions that I would include in the application, and to address that, the best way that we've requested the information is to be put in a table so that it's very clear.
Thank you very much. We have a variety of questions here. What material should be put in appendix? For example, the RFA indicates the appendix should include at least one example of a gene or gene targeted therapy trial conducted by the members of the GTC. Shanta, would you mind taking this one for us?
Sure. For the clinical coordinating center, it's perfectly okay for them to provide a sample protocol, for example, analysis plans or case report forms as allowed in the appendix policies for any gene therapy trials that they have been part of and conducted. The idea is to show that you have the necessary expertise required to conduct those trials, and in more ways than just biosketches of involved personnel. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanta. How will the GTC and NeuroNEXT Executive Committee interact? How will their responsibilities overlap and differ? Sophie, could you take this one?
Right. So the GTC that we're referring to here is a infrastructure. Again, we're referring members as consultants. So there'll be consultants, 6 to 10 members. And the actual trials will come through the research opportunity announcement, which will be released later once the infrastructure is established. So once the ROA is released and once the trial proposals come in, then it'll be reviewed by the NEC, and they will then activate the GTC. Certain members, consultants, so they'll work together at that point when we receive the trial proposals.
Let me just add one comment to that. So it will be possible to remunerate the Gene Therapy Consortium members, but that will happen through the other transactions process and the research opportunity announcement process that Sophie alluded to earlier. So salary support for the GTC members would not be included in the budget for the CCC. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Will all NeuroNEXT sites have the option to be part of the gene therapy trials? Meaning, will the process for site selection for the gene therapy be the same for the other NeuroNEXT network trials? So this was partially addressed, but I don't know if Sophie would like to add something else.
Right. So again, the gene therapy trial will be received and funded through, like I said, Clint said, through the research opportunity announcement and OT mechanism. The NN sites, NeuroNEXT clinical sites, definitely are welcome to participate, but also there may be an ad hoc sites because of the limited patient cohort distribution. And that will be decided again per with the consultants' opinions as well as NEC members' input.
We have some specific questions here. Are non-medical interventions like physical therapy intervention no longer be funded through the NeuroNEXT mechanism? Sophie?
Yeah, I can take that. So non-pharmacological intervention can be definitely considered. And in fact, we have a light therapy study going on for PD in NeuroNEXT. So as long as it's novel, it's a good fit for the NeuroNEXT purpose, then it can be considered.
Thank you. We have one more. How should should we answer human subjects questions since this is for the infrastructure? The Ashanta, would you mind taking this one for us? Shanta?
Lumi, could you repeat that question?
Sure.
I lost audio for a second.
Sure. How should we answer human subjects questions since this is for an infrastructure award?
You don't have to address human subjects. So since these are all infrastructure grants, they come in as human subjects, no, clinical trials, no. So you do not have to include any of the sections required on human subjects or the inclusion plans that typically would be.
Okay. The next question is, how many trips or meetings should a site budget for each year? How long are the meetings and where will they be held? How about Scott taking this one for us?
Yeah, generally what we would plan is that one trip per year. I would anticipate 2 days worth of travel. Network meetings are usually planned for single afternoons, so that can be in and out, but usually overnight should be included. And for planning purposes, I would plan for meetings in Washington, D.C. That gives the most central location for the budget.
Thank you. In the first presentation, it stated that stroke was not part of the NeuroNEXT, but later showed a stroke trial. Is it expected or preferable to have a stroke expertise co-investigator for a NeuroNEXT clinical trial site? Sophie, would you mind taking this one? Or Scott?
Yeah, I can take it. So StrokeNet was established after the NeuroNEXT was established. So, initially the stroke trial came in, but now we have a separate network for the stroke-related research. So NeuroNEXT is focused on general neurology other than stroke.
Thank you. We would like just to confirm the fellow for these sites is meant to be a faculty level person, early stage investigator, such as beginning assistant professor, or should this person be named in the application? Sophie?
Right. So this training program, it is open for both fellows and junior faculties in the early stage. And I see some of other related questions too. our intention was to award one trainee per the site, so not be split, between two or more fellows. And what was the sorry, other question?
If this person should be named in the application.
No, it doesn't have to be named, but they have to name the director and mentors who can help this trainee.
Thank you very much. Not entirely sure if I understand this question, but will a backup CCC and DCCs be chosen in case the center cannot take on more work? Scott, could you take this one, please?
So as I read the question, question is whether or not we would fund 2 data centers or 2 coordinating centers, and the plan for this renewal cycle is to award 1 renewed center for the next 5 years. So we do not have plans to have 2 or more than 1 data or clinical coordinating center.
Okay. Could you clarify the requirements for the career enhancement plan or fellowship? With the application, is it best to have an identified fellow or junior faculty member in the application, or is it more a description of overall educational program resources available at the site? Sophie, do you think you can take this one, please?
Right. Yeah, I think we addressed some of the questions. So they don't have to name, the trainee, but have to have a plan for the program. Our intention was to support 50% of the time, the salary for the 50% of protected research time, and within the NeuroNEXT. There's the educational activities as well as a clinical trial methodology course that is related to NeuroNEXT, mission and purpose. So I don't know, Scott, if you want to add more, because you have other networks have similar training program.
Right. What's really important, so fellows are going to be selected annually. They might serve 2-year program. It depends on how NeuroNEXT proceeds with that. In StrokeNet, we do allow 1 fellow to be on a StrokeNet fellow for 2 years. In the application, what's really imperative for the sites is to provide the data that shows what your access pool is, what your training plan is, to show that there's a pathway for identifying early stage investigators that might be appropriate for this fellowship award in the NeuroNEXT program. So it's more about experience, specificity, and identification would be highly valuable, I think, to the review and understanding what your capabilities are.
Thank you very much. This question was also previously addressed, but can the table of studies and metrics be included in the appendix, or is this required to be embedded in the 12-page research strategy? So Shanta or Scott?
Yeah, I can. Go ahead,
Scott.
So I should have clarified that earlier. Shanta can clarify the NIH language on the appendix, but the appendix cannot be used to expand the 12 pages. In the requirement for the site applications, the table would have to be included in your 12 pages. So the answer is no.
Okay, thank you. At the time of the original FOA, the training program specified that only a single fellow could be selected at one time. The slides today suggest that at least 1 fellow could be supported at one time. Is this correct, Sophie?
Yes, our intention was to award 1 fellow per year per the site. Not sure in the past if any site had more than one fellows. Scott, do you have any experience with that kind of situation?
Sorry, I missed that question. Can you
Yeah,
repeat?
actually, let me, we have a follow-up question that is related to that. So at the time of the original FOA, the training program specified that only one single fellow could be selected at one time. However, the slides today suggest that at least one fellow could be supported at one time. As a related question, the original FOA specified that NeuroNEXT fellow must commit 50% FTA of protected time to the training and participation. Is this true in the setting in which two fellows are supported? If funds are split between the two fellows simultaneously, must both fellows commit 50% of effort? Scott, could you take this one, please?
Yeah, so this is an experience that we've had in StrokeNet. The intent is that at least one fellow would have the 50% protected time and the 50,000 that would be allocated towards their effort. We do not split that between multiple fellows. Now, if there are other resources that can support a second fellow in that NeuroNEXT center, the training opportunities, are easily extended into those individuals. But we require that each center have at least one fellow that has the protected time.
Thank you very much. As it relates to previously funded sites applying for a renewal, should only the history of NeuroNEXT specific trials be presented in the application, or all clinical trials in our disease area at the university should be included? Sophie, could you take this one?
Yeah, I'll start. So as I mentioned in the presentation, the current sites have to have the NeuroNEXT clinical trials that they have participated in the application. The FOA does not stop them from including other trials outside of NeuroNEXT. But again, our intention was to see how they've done well in the NeuroNEXT network and how they contributed to the network function. But if they want to include other multi-site clinical trials that were done outside of the network, that is also allowed for the last 5 years.
Thank you. Another question about appendix. What biosketches are needed for the appendix? Shanta, please.
Biosketches are required for anybody who's listed as key personnel and other significant contributors on the in the application. They are not required for people who provide letters of support.
Yeah, I think the question is, what are the biosketches needed for the appendix?
Biosketches cannot be included in the appendix.
Thank you. Okay, can you describe expectations for career enhancement fellowships? The RFA states that career enhancement fellowship should be at least 50,000 K as well as 50,000 effort. Is the 50,000 salary support only, or can this be applied to salary and research project? Scott, could you take this one, please?
Now, it's intended to support the effort of that individual. It's not designed to support a project that they're doing. So this is salary effort, and this is, again, this is, we refer to this as career enhancement because it's the opportunity with the network to engage investigators at an early stage in their career to bring them from the medical field into the research field. And there's a pathway within the network. There will be a program that will be managed by the clinical coordinating center, so that fellows get the experience of working across the network with other fellows. But to answer the question specifically, this is for their protected time and effort in participating in the NeuroNEXT activities around this program.
Thank you. May the CCC provide support for committee co-chairs if they are funded NeuroNEXT PIs, for example, for stipends? Sophie?
Yes, the short answer is yes.
So another question about the human subjects. So as a follow-up on the human subjects question, in the clinical site application, should we check the no button on the questions, are human subjects involved? Shanta, please.
That is correct.
Thank you. How much detail is required in describing the recruitment of minority populations as effort are newer at our site? Scott?
Sorry, I was reading the other questions. I missed your question. I'm not a good multitasker, as you can tell.
I'm glad you are. How much detail is required in describing the recruitment of minority population?
I would put attention and effort into that aspect of the application, talking about the site's experience and plans at that site to have community outreach that would enrich the populations that they can enroll and study. This is an important aspect of our renewals going forward.
No biosketches needed for potential investigator for future trials. Shanta or Sophie?
If they are not included as key personnel or other significant contributors in the current application, then no. In theory, you do not need biosketches for those.
Correct. This is for the infrastructural activity.
That is correct. You could always have a table listing them, their areas of expertise and the kinds of experience that qualify them as future potential investigators for trials that are suitable for this network.
Thank you. Can we include performance in the StrokeNet to support our NeuroNEXT application, including recruitment numbers? Scott?
Sure. I mean, again, there's two aspects to this. If this center is a currently awarded NeuroNEXT center, they are going to provide a progress report of the activity that they participated in NeuroNEXT, but the criteria designed around the research plan are also designed to show their potential and capacity going into the next 5 years. So from that aspect, other information that they have could certainly be used to demonstrate what their future capacity. Now, keep in mind that for StrokeNet, vascular stroke trials go into StrokeNet. So this network is focusing on other diseases outside of stroke. So I think you would want to make sure that you're addressing that as well. But in terms of clinical trial experience and performance, yes, I would say you could include that.
Are you selecting just 25 clinical sites again, or are you expanding the network to include more facilities? I'll have this for Scott again or Clint.
I think Shanta wanted to add something.
I'm sorry.
No, I think Scott actually covered it in the end. All I wanted to add was that, if you are part of NeuroNEXT, if you are an existing site, wherever possible, you should highlight your accomplishments in the network itself. If you are not currently a NeuroNEXT site or have been an ad hoc site, I think the reviewers would like to see how you have performed within the NeuroNEXT trial. So wherever possible, data that is available on the NeuroNEXT trials should be included in the application. And for the rest of the trials, you obviously want to put your best foot forward. So you are certainly welcome to provide additional data.
That's right.
Thank you very much. So going back to the other question, are you selecting just 25 clinical sites, or are you expanding the network to include more facilities? Scott, could you take this one, please?
So we have approval through our council to fund up to 25 NeuroNEXT sites. Those sites can work with outside sites within their consortium. But at the current time, we are planning to award up to 25 sites based on how they do in review, obviously.
Thank you very much. We are 2 minutes before the 1 o'clock. I did see some questions, but we have addressed most of them. There are some duplicates, but we will make sure to address all of them in FAQ. And with this, thank you so much for your interest. And I am sending back to John for closing. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, Lumi, for moderating. And want to just thank the team and the panelists for the engaging discussion. I'm very appreciative of all the participants for submitting questions ahead of time and throughout this past hour. Hopefully we address most of your questions and provided clarification. As I mentioned early on, we will have a few FAQ sheet posted to the site. This webinar is also recorded. That will also be posted and available for your review. And if there are additional clarifications or questions needed, please reach out. So thank you all very much for today. Oh, and most importantly, I want to thank Jana Bessler-Ehrlich and NINDS IT support for really putting this together very efficiently and very quickly. So thank you very much for your efforts.